Hello, this is Adam with DreamMade Productions. This video is made possible by the very kind donations of viewers like you. Thank you. If you are in a position to help this channel improve quality and grow, please visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Let me be perfectly clear. BattleTech is one of my favorite board or miniatures games of all time. Its expansive lore, its cool products, and the simple yet complex gameplay keeps me coming back. BattleTech is, however, not the only game that has influenced my life. For as long as I can remember, my family has played board or card games to one degree or another. Sure, when I was young, it was checkers, Chutes and Ladders, Trouble, Sorry, Connect 4, Battleship, Operation, Clue, Chinese Checkers, and of course, Life and Monopoly. As I got older, I was introduced to more and more games, until eventually I became the very amateur collector that I am today. When I started this channel, I intended to include battle reports on more than just BattleTech, a goal I hope to accomplish one day. As a kind of prelude to that, I thought I would talk some about games that have influenced me over the years, and ones that may be covered on this channel in a future date. For the purpose of this list, I'm leaving off all the children's games I noted before. These are just the more complex games that have shaped me more as a teen and adult. G.I. Joe Commando Attack. As a huge fan of G.I. Joe, I cannot tell you how happy I was as a kid to get this monster for Christmas one year. As a kid, I could not get enough G.I. Joe, and while I had some of the toys, I was missing quite a few of the ones I wanted. The cardboard cutouts of this game were not the figures I wanted, but at least I could use them as stand-ins. While the gameplay is absurdly simple, it did open my eyes to larger possibilities. The simple cardboard buildings and massive board were technically my first gaming terrain. In the 1980s, G.I. Joe figures did not come with figure stands, so this board game was one of the very few ways you could get your hands on a lot of those stands to display your collection. I can't tell you how many times I had my mom play this game with me. I hope one day G.I. Joe makes a comeback and gets the treatment it deserves. A role-playing game and a miniatures game would be awesome. Risk. As I grew older, I wanted more complex experiences, and the classic Risk was my first tactical board game. Again, Risk is extremely simple by today's standards. It helped open my eyes to see more possibilities outside of Life and Monopoly. It did not take long for my cousin and I to discover the flaws in Risk and for the game to become repetitive. Still, it served as a gateway for future military strategy games to come. As an odd side note, years after the board game lost its luster, I would find a much better version where else but for the PlayStation 1. Risk for PS1 added generals, tactics, forts, and capitals. Such complexity added so much to the game. For hours, my friends and I would play Risk for PS1. Our excitement for Risk for PS2 was only matched by our disappointment that that version was just the normal board game without any of the PS1 additions. Come on, Hasbro. The last time you showed any move to a more complex version of Risk was 1999 and Risk Edition Napoleon. Stop with the endless reskins and put out a game that lets us truly feel like we are fighting for world domination. Fireball Island. Until its successful Kickstarter, Fireball Island spent years in somewhat obscurity. While I enjoy the Kickstarter remake, I just love the more serious feel of the original. I always describe Fireball Island as Indiana Jones the board game. Now, I know there are official Indiana Jones board games, but I did not know that as a kid, and to this day, I've never actually played one. No, to me, Fireball Island was the perfect Indiana Jones adventure in board game form. It had everything a kid could want: a jaw-dropping 3D board with amazing art, dice, figures, marbles, cards, and that crazy idol that sat at the top. This game was a go-to favorite for when the family got together, and us kids put way too much thought into the rules. So many arguments would break out based on the somewhat nebulous rules, leading to 12-year-olds arguing their cases like the lawyers in Law and Order. As I mentioned before, I bought into the Kickstarter remake, and it's a fine game, but the redesign tries to lean into the silliness too much to keep the Indiana Jones feel. I hope the cult following and the interest drummed up by the reimagination leads to a straight re-release of the 1986 classic. Clue, the Great Museum Caper. I am sure nearly everyone out there has played the classic Clue game at some point or another. Clue is a game that has its endless reskins that add little to nothing to the game, but unlike others, there have been other versions of the game that added more to the experience. The simplest is Clue Master Detective, which just adds more characters, more rooms, more weapons, making the killer harder to uncover, but otherwise pretty much leaves the rest of the game unchanged. There is Clue Secrets and Spies, as well as Clue Discover the Secrets, which changes the game quite a bit. However, Clue the Great Museum Caper is a totally different game, and my first foray into asymmetrical experience. In the Great Museum Caper, it is one thief against all the other players. The thief tries to steal paintings and escape while the other players team up and try to stop him. The game really opened my eyes that a game does not have to be every man for himself and team-on-team experience. With proper rules, a team could work together to take down a single player, and the game could be fair. The game has its flaws, like relying on the thief player to be honest. Still, having a game unbalanced, yet still somewhat fair, is an experience I have tried to replicate in some of my design projects, to varying degrees of success. Still, aside from Fireball Island, this game was a favorite for us kids to play at holiday get-togethers. Of course, the game is now owned by Hasbro because, they own everything. This game has not seen the light of day since its Parker Brothers release in 1991. Come on, Hasbro. Hero Quest. One day in middle school, I went to a friend's house, and my life changed forever. Until that moment, my experience with board games had been a singular experience. You played the game, it ended. You started over, perhaps, or moved to another. At most, you could play rounds and see who won the most. Hero Quest changed all that. Here was a game that had a story, and what happened in one play mattered in the next. It was not the same old game over and over. This game changed. The story changed. The board changed. The monsters changed. Your characters could get new equipment, changing them. This blew my mind. Sure, I had long ago left the most simplistic of my old games behind, but this was something special. It prepared me for what was to follow. Dated by today's standards, the game still remains fun. At the time, I had no idea of its connection to Games Workshop's Warhammer Fantasy, and by Warp Shenanigans, the Warhammer 40k universe. Still, you need to know nothing of those games to enjoy Hero Quest. For once, I do have some praise for Hasbro, because of course, they own this too. They are working on a re-release of this classic game. It's not an exact re-release, they are making updates to the art, miniatures, and lore. I noticed how the Chaos Warriors are now Dread Warriors. Can't help but think they are distancing themselves as much as they can from GW. Still, the new version of the game looks amazing, and I might just have to pick it up. Axis and Allies. I don't remember when I played my first game of Axis and Allies, but it is a game I just love. Axis and Allies is nearly everything Risk promised, but never delivered on. It is an epic game that has so many options. I am a big fan of the larger versions of the game, and while the original is fun, the more you add, the more fun it is in my opinion. I think I currently own 3 different editions of the game, and I will no doubt be getting more. In fact, I'm trying to find an affordable copy of Axis and Allies 1914. Sadly, today's crazy work schedules and a lack of a space where a game can be set up and just left means Axis and Allies rarely gets played. Still, this game has added so much to my gaming experience, not only in itself and its miniature spin-offs, War at Sea was my favorite of those, but also leading me into the World War II and other historical miniatures games in general. I don't know if I would have discovered those games without Axis and Allies to open the door. I doubt my old friends at Hasbro will do it, but I wish they would release boxes of gaming pieces. You would be surprised how handy they can be. They are even fun to paint and customize. I just wish I could play more. Magic the Gathering. It is hard to understate the impact Magic the Gathering has had on the world. In my opinion, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and even online card games like Hearthstone all owe their existence to Magic the Gathering. Oddly, Magic was not my first CCG. That honor goes to the somewhat overly nerdy 1994 Star Trek the Customizable card game. That did not last long, as soon after I played my first game of Magic the Gathering. I'm fairly sure my first ever Magic the Gathering pack was an unlimited pack, and before you get too excited, no, I don't. Whatever you were thinking, I don't have one. I have a few unlimited lands, and I think like a lightning bolt or something. No, sadly, I can't retire on my Magic card gold mine. I was too broke to have much of a collection, and I have promised myself that I was done playing several times over the decades. Still, I just keep coming back. I will bring my old decks into game stores and play people. I thought I was all but done the last time. Then Arena came out, and I was dragged in again. I don't play with the physical cards anymore. It's just too much of a hassle these days. But the countless hours of building decks and playing with your friends, I just can't describe the fun. Dungeons and Dragons. As I mentioned before, HeroQuest prepared me for what was to follow, and that was Dungeons and Dragons. I missed the early D&D craze of the 70s and 80s, but I was there for the 90s, where HeroQuest opened the door to story-based gaming. Dungeons and Dragons ripped the door down and blew up the wall for good measure. While I love BattleTech, Dungeons and Dragons defined me as a gamer. It created a love of storytelling that carries on to this day. I have played almost every incarnation of D&D over the years, and I can honestly say my favorite still remains the 3.5 edition system. I might bring the mood down a little here, but for my younger viewers, you have to realize it was a different time growing up back then. Us nerds were far from accepted when and where I grew up. I am deeply grateful pop culture has, for the most part, moved beyond such things and allowed geek culture to flourish. I am glad others will never have to experience that frame of mind at that age. Today, you can pick up D&D books at Walmart and RPG dice packs at Dollar Tree. D&D deserves that, and so do the people who will use those books and dice to make friends and have adventures they will cherish for the rest of their lives. Star Wars Starship Battles. I am something of a Star Wars fan, and by that I mean I love Star Wars. I drive Jenny absolutely crazy with my Star Wars quotes. I watch the films, I watch the TV shows, I have read, at last count, 142 of the books. So let's get some stuff out of the way right now. Lucas Star Wars is the only Star Wars. The prequels are not good, but they are not that bad either. Disney has been mostly awful for Star Wars, though now I can say best Disney princess is now hands down Princess Leia. Luke over Han, but not by much. Best non-movie character is Thrawn. Best book is any of the Stackpole X-Wing books. Best writers are Zahn, Stackpole, and Travis. And let's get one thing straight. It's not Legends or even Expanded Universe. It's Lucas Star Wars as opposed to Disney Star Wars. Everyone on the same page now? Okay, good. Back to gaming. Star Wars Starship Battles was a game that grabbed me, but not for the game itself. I love the X-Wing games, and when Wizards of the Coast came out with this game, I thought it would be awesome. I had played some World War II miniatures games recently and hoped it would be like that. It wasn't. Not even close. So why am I talking about it then? Because I love the minis. They were awesome, and for the price, they reminded me of the Micro Machine toys I loved as a kid. So I bought them whenever I could. But then I had a ton of minis for a game I did not want to play. And so began a project that continues to this day. Star Wars Starship Battles may have been fairly simple and just made a nagging itch that much worse, but it also got the creative juices flowing. Now, 15 years later, I am nearing completion on the second edition of my Star Wars miniature rules. That all started because of this crappy game. Things have moved on since then. The Fantasy Flight X-Wing and Armada game minis are much better in most ways. But for me, this game inspired me on a labor of love. I hope one day to have battle reports on this channel of my game, Star Wars Fleet Action, and to get those rules out to people who will enjoy them. So, silver lining and all. Dominion. Dominion was a game I was introduced to during a very difficult time in my life. Things had fallen apart in a way that still affects me today. At a convention, I played Dominion and it took my mind off what was happening in my life, at least for a little while. I bought the old big box set and played for many years. It was my first deck building game and opened the door to other games that would follow. It has its problems, but it spawned a whole slew of games I still play. Before the official online Dominion got started, there was an unofficial online game that let you play with all the cards for free, at least until they found out about it. Trying to keep my mind off what was going on at the time, I played that online game and the physical card game way too much. Deck builders can get repetitive, and the game kind of played itself out. Still, I do enjoy the newer games that have come out that take steps to lessen the repetitivity that can lead to things feeling stale. Japanime Games has its collection that I enjoy. Telling on myself here, I will admit my guilty pleasure of Kamigami Battles. Thank you, Jenny, for putting up with the cultured elements of the game. Dominion was the first I played and more or less set the standard for the games to come. Playing Dominion brings back bad memories, so I don't often pull out the cards. But that's on me. The game itself is really good, and all those deck builders owe a lot to Dominion. Well, I could go on for hours. I love games of all kinds. BattleTech may well be my favorite, but all games hold a place for me. Board games, card games, miniature games, video games, and everything in between. I hope someday soon to share with you these games as well as others in my collection. Maybe you will see something you like, get your own, and get joy from these gems. Perhaps you will enjoy the storytelling I weave from these games and share my passion that way. One, both, or neither. In the end, I am glad you have given me the chance to entertain you. Thank you. And as always, I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come. Hello, this is Adam with Dream Made Productions. Thank you for watching my content. It really means a lot that you have given me the chance to entertain you. If you would like to support the channel, please visit my Patreon at patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Also below is a link for PayPal, or links if you would like to send crypto, if that's more your thing. Please know any amount that you give will be cherished and used to upgrade equipment and improve the channel. You can also help the channel by subscribing, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and sharing my channel with anyone you think might be interested. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come.